Tonight, the matchlessly brilliant, award-winning author Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie. You could describe her as Nigeria's international superpower celebrity novelist, and you wouldn't go amiss, because her career is littered with the world's major literary prizes. But beyond her phenomenal talent, which is there for all to see, Chimamanda Adichie has followed the tradition of Africa's literary giants before her, becoming, to some extent, the conscience of her troubled nation, speaking out fearlessly against injustice, corruption, the harsh realities of electoral malpractice, and what she calls Nigeria's hollow democracy, and to use her words, the brewing rage and smouldering disillusionment over the failure of that democracy to capture the true voice of the people. But as she tries to transform the narrative by writing an open letter to the US President Joe Biden, published in the Atlantic Daily, about, as she put it, the unacceptably and unforgivably flawed 2023 presidential election, how much is that chronicle resonating within and outside Nigeria? I'll be joined from our studios in Lagos by the critically acclaimed Nigerian author Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie. Plus, we have our top-tier analysts who will help us assess the news and issues of the day. I'm Charles Anyegolu, and this is Arise Prime Time. Welcome back to Arise Prime Time. I'm Charles Anyegolu. Now, my top guest today is the rousingly talented, award-winning writer Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie, who has etched her name in history as an international best-selling author, ranking with the best of them across Africa and the world. Her books, including Purple Hibiscus, Half of a Yellow Sun, and Americana, have become masterpieces and have been read by millions. Much of her writing speaks powerfully about life in Nigeria, about the complex historical and cultural experience of growing up here, about love, hope, ethnic strife and national identity, and about a world beset by conflict. And now, in the wake of Nigeria's disputed 2023 presidential election, she's delivered what some have called a landmark article titled Nigeria's Hollow Democracy. It's an open letter to the US President Joe Biden, published by the Atlantic Daily, and in it she raises questions about Bola Tinubu's election victory and wonders why America is congratulating the winner of what she refers to as Nigeria's disastrous ballot. So, as you might have guessed, in the wake of that powerful scratch, she's been vilified by some and praised by others as a herald of truth. Well, for more about her verdict on Nigeria's presidential election, I'm suitably delighted to say that I'm joined now from our studios in Lagos by the critically acclaimed award-winning author Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie. Chimamanda, thank you very much indeed for joining us, and I apologize for the stress you had to go through getting to the studio. I understand it's pouring buckets in Lagos and there's the snarling up of traffic. So thank you very much for joining us.
No, I should apologize. I should have left, knowing Lagos, of course, I should have left on time. So I should apologize.
Well, the most important thing is that you're here. So let's get straight into it, because you called the 2023 presidential election a slap to the face of the Nigerian people and insults to the collective intelligence of Nigerians. Tell us why you see it that way.
Well, I see that when I wrote that letter, because I think it's important to preserve the truth. Right? I think that when something like this happens in a country, it's really important to tell the story of what happened. One of my favorite poems has this line. It's by Robert Lowell, and it says, "And yet, why not say what happened?" So I wanted to say what happened. And what happened is that this was an election that was really unforgivably flawed. And there's evidence for that. And I felt it was important to say that. But also, I wanted to call out the U.S. for what I consider a kind of two-facedness when it comes to Africa. So, the U.S. has a long history of complicity in, sort of non-democratic elections on this continent. So recently in Congo, 2 or 3 years ago, they endorsed an election that was an absolute sham. But then the same US will turn around and criticize Congo for not being democratic. And so my point was to say, be what you say you are, right? You cannot criticize African countries for being undemocratic, while at the same time endorsing something that is quite self-evidently undemocratic.
Well, that's a good point. But just delving deeper into your letter, you were quite categorical in saying that the electoral process was imperiled not by technical shortcomings, but by deliberate manipulation. Is there enough evidence in your assessment to support that claim?
Yes, and I think maybe the most glaring is that we Nigerians all saw these mutilated election sheets, right? We all saw them. We saw polling unit agents talking about how what they had from the polling unit was not what was then announced formally, officially, or uploaded formally, officially. And I think for me, that's a really striking reason and an example of how this election was not about technical glitches. And can we also realize that Nigeria is full of very bright young people in tech? There's no reason for that excuse of technical glitch. And the other question then is, if it was a technical glitch, why was it possible for most people to upload the results of the other federal elections, but not the presidential? And I think most of all is that there's just been this resounding unfortunate silence from INEC and from the chair of INEC. I think Nigerians deserve the respect of an institution that's supposed to shepherd their democracy. So nobody's come out to explain to Nigerians how that happened. There's a statement about technical glitches. It's unconvincing. And knowing how much hope and trust that Nigerians invested in this election, knowing that Nigeria is a low-trust society, means, I think, that if people really are sincere and there's really nothing to hide, then you make an extra effort to go out and explain to Nigerians what happened.
Yes, that certainly makes a lot of sense to a lot of people. But in reacting to your letter, and some of the things that you said in it, the APC have suggested that you were not in Nigeria during the election and you did not vote, and therefore should not make categorical statements about an election you did not witness. What's your reaction to that?
Well, I don't think it's very useful criticism. I should say, first of all, that I've never been fazed by criticism. I mean, I wrote this, of course, knowing fully well that there would be criticism from certain quarters. And I've seen a few things people have sent to me, and it's kind of been amusing to read the juvenile fulminations of non-juvenile people. But that said, I actually did try very hard. And I should say, I have two homes. I have a home here in Lagos, I have a home in the US. I'm very often here. I tried very hard to get my PVC. And the reason I tried very hard is because I had been assured that technology would save us, right? That it had worked in Oshun, worked in Ekiti, and I think in Anambra, that it would save us. And so I really tried. And we should also talk about how difficult it was to collect PVCs and how that in itself is a form of voter disenfranchisement. And so I had done the first part, but then I couldn't collect my PVC. And so, yes, did not vote. But my not voting does not mean that I cannot comment on an election. I'm a Nigerian citizen. Every Nigerian citizen has a right to have an opinion about this election. And so when people say that Beavers worked, but IREV didn't work, which is sort of a way of countering the accusation that the technology was manipulated, really the response is both have to work for the election to be credible. Right, so Beavers was about making sure that we didn't have ghost voters, that people who were actually there voted. But that it defeats the purpose if you then do not upload the results, because those results that you have sort of you've made sure that real people voted, but then those real results